L'honorable député de Lac-Saint-Louis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I will not address the budget's assault on environmental protection, including on water monitoring, or on weakening food inspection, or the government's puzzling decision, in light of its professed monopoly on loyalty to our military, to reduce the number of medical professionals involved in suicide prevention and PTSD monitoring, or its targeting of the CBC, a vehicle for holding all governments, regardless of political stripe, to account through world-class reporting and for facilitating homegrown cultural expression that reflects and strengthens Canadian values and identity. Rather, I will focus on the budget's impact on younger Canadians. I would not go so far as to say that the budget is an attack on younger Canadians. I will not use that kind of intemperate language, but I will say that the budget is neglectful of younger Canadians. It fails to consider their legitimate needs, and as a result, it fails to build for the country's future. Canada needs to excel as a knowledge economy, Madam Speaker, if we wish to prosper in the world of the 21st century. Yet the budget does nothing specific to encourage young people to pursue a post-secondary education, or otherwise to reduce the financial barriers that prevent some from pursuing such an education. There is nothing in this budget like Paul Martin's highly successful cash grant for those who invest in a registered education savings plan for their children's post-secondary education. As we know, the federal government today contributes $2 for every $10 Canadians invest in their children's RESP. Nor do we see the budget introduce a version of the Canadian Learning Passport. The Canadian Learning Passport was an idea in the 2011 Liberal election platform. It was based on the principle that if you get the grades, you get to go. The idea of the passport was to offer all high school students intending to go on to college or university $1,000 in trust for each year of anticipated post-secondary education, up to a maximum of $4,000. $1,500 per year, up to a maximum of $6,000 for students from low-income families. Now that's smart public policy, Madam Speaker. Public policy that achieves a triple objective: supplying our economy with the skilled labor it needs for the 21st century, preparing our youth for the jobs of tomorrow, and thirdly, achieving an important measure of social justice by removing barriers to education for all youth, including those from low-income families. On another matter of importance to Canada's future, we must not ignore the relationship between university scientific research and the education and career success of today's young people. University research produces concrete benefits for student researchers. It provides students with an important practical avenue of intellectual development so that they can later make a meaningful contribution to a science-based economy. I noticed in this regard that the budget eliminates a very financially modest but highly successful program in the area of science and engineering research, the Research Tools and Infrastructure Program, known as RTI. RTI provides funding for the purchase and repair of lab equipment of a value up to $150,000. This amount is way below the threshold for CFI funding that targets multi-million-dollar, multi-applicant projects. It is not an exaggeration to say that the RTI program is the lifeblood of most NSERC-funded university research because it provides researchers with a reasonable chance of obtaining the equipment they need to do their work. As my colleague from Kingston said last week in a question he asked in this House, for research scientists, eliminating the RTI is like sending a carpenter to work without a hammer. Furthermore, a well-known university researcher in Montreal has written to me to say that by the government nixing the RTI, quote, we will lose staff, we will lose students, we will lose knowledge. I don't know why the government made such a short-sighted decision, Madam Speaker. And speaking of opportunities for young people, let us not forget the brutal cancellation of Katimavik. Katimavik provides a unique experience for young people seeking to discover their strengths, skills, and independence at a difficult crossroads in their life. After the announcement of Katimavik's demise, Katie Wheatley, a constituent of mine and a Katimavik alumni, wrote to me with the following testimonial. Quote, coming out of the Katimavik program has left me with complete bilingualism, invaluable work experience, an incredible sense of accomplishment and empowerment, and a brighter future. Madam Speaker, what more is there to say?
Absolutely.
What leads us to question the government's objectivity in its decision to terminate Katimavik is the fact that the decision is retroactive. It has left candidates already accepted for next year's edition of the program flat-footed, deeply deflated, and scrambling to make new plans. One could even say that the decision is, if not legally, then morally, tantamount to a breach of contract.
Yep.
This breach of contract carries an air of vindictiveness. It is an open secret that the government pulled the plug on Katimavik mostly because the program was the brainchild of the Trudeau government. Finally, the change to OAS eligibility will impact on younger Canadians, since the change will apply to anyone born after 1958. The generations that will be hit by this change include those whose members' professional careers often took longer to launch than was the case for previous generations. Many younger Canadians are today struggling with career and income, and this change will exacerbate the challenges they face down the line. The Liberal opposition is foursquare against the budget's change to OAS eligibility, for other reasons as well. First, various experts have argued convincingly that raising the age of eligibility to receive OAS is not necessary to sustain the system. Second, Liberals believe that many Canadians who have held physically demanding jobs may find it very difficult to work beyond 65. Many, in fact, will be forced to retire before 65. An example is nurses, Madam Speaker. A constituent, Anna May Barrett, called my office to remind the government that being a nurse is a physically demanding job, with overtime, staff shortages, and increasingly longer shifts. Yet the government's decision on OAS eligibility appears to ignore this reality. How much time do I have left, Madam Speaker? 3 minutes. Third, the OAS provides much-needed financial assistance to many low-income seniors, would-be low-income seniors who would otherwise find themselves below the poverty line. Fourth, many women who chose to stay at home may not have other pensions to draw on at 65 years of age. This new delay in receiving OAS will prejudice these Canadians and deny them a measure of economic freedom they were counting on. I would add that I believe it vital for a healthy democracy that Canadians be able to trust their government. Many Canadians will consider that the decision to change the age of eligibility for OAS as a betrayal of that trust, especially in light of the commitments made by the Prime Minister during the recent election campaign that a Conservative government would not change retirement benefits. A Liberal government would reverse the change to OAS eligibility, Madam Speaker, bringing the age at which all Canadians would be eligible to receive this benefit back to 65. Now, Madam Speaker, another Liberal idea that was promoted during the last election campaign is missing from this budget. The idea of a supplemental Canada pension plan.
Good idea.
You know, the Canada pension plan is extremely well managed. It's recognized internationally as a very low-cost, cheap to administer program that brings higher rates of returns than other large pension plans. So why not allow Canadians to invest even more in this high return pension system? Why not commit to working with the provinces to devise a pan-Canadian improvement to the CPP, QPP system that would allow Canadians who might have extra money to save for retirement to invest that money with the Canadian Pension Plan Investment Board. These are the kinds of constructive suggestions that, if included in the budget, might allow the opposition to see things a little differently. Do I have 1 minute left, Madam Speaker? I'd like to, since my colleague from Papineau is here, I'd like to comment on a video I saw recently. It was the video of the very first televised question period in the House of Commons. And the question was from the Honourable Joe Clark. And the economic situation was quite similar at the time. And Mr. Clark asked a respectful question of the government about its plan for economic recovery. And the Prime Minister at the time, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, got up and instead of slamming the opposition impugning their motives, said, well, we're hoping that the opposition will provide some constructive ideas that we can include in our plan for economic recovery. That's the kind of openness we need today in our democracy, Madam.